Coming up on this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Alaina Pinto, VP Kamala Harris comes out for full legalization and regulation of cannabis while playing the race, gender, and weed card, while the former president, named Trump, aligns with his state of Florida's Yes on 3 adult use ballot question.
It's got to be done in a very concerted, lawful way, and the way they're doing it in Florida, it's going to be very good.
A shootout in a dispensary in Oregon ends up with 2 deaths and a double murder charge for the dispensary's employee who did the shooting while claiming self-defense. California recalls the entire Kush collective brand and pulls the cannabis company's license. And the governor, Gavin Newsom's emergency ban of hemp-derived products in his state starts with a seizure of 700 products by the Alcohol Beverage Control Board. And how much product was the group who created the Starbuds logo in New York using when they created the logo that was a direct copy of Starbucks logo? Now a judge calls out the obvious copyright infringement. And guess who was at the Today Show weather board? Yep, that's Snoop Dogg with the forecast from Pottstown, PA to Mary Jane Falls in Nevada. Just another week of news on Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Alaina Pinto. Next!
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another weekly edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast News, Pro Cannabis Media's roundup of what is going on in the cannabis industry. I'm Alaina Pinto. With just under 3 weeks to go before the presidential election, both candidates are spending most of their time in so-called swing states, and their policies on cannabis are being talked about. Right now, VP Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are in a dead heat, according to the latest polls, especially if you consider the margin of error. Both candidates have used the cannabis issue to attract some of 70% of adults who want to see it legalized. Even though he's been a little late to embrace the plant, Donald Trump did appear in an advertisement restating his position as a Florida resident that he intends to vote yes on question 3 that would legalize adult use of cannabis there. Kamala Harris, in the meantime, continues to talk about her plan and ideas on legalization. Here's a clip from the latest advertisement from the Smart and Safe Florida Yes on 3 campaign that has dropped over $100 million in Florida media.
President Trump endorses Amendment 3, saying, as a Floridian, I'll be voting yes on Amendment 3.
It's got to be a certain age. It's got to be done in a very concerted, lawful way, and the way they're doing it in Florida, it's going to be very good.
Amendment 3 legalizes marijuana for adults, safe, lab-tested, and regulated, generating billions for schools and law enforcement. Join President Donald Trump. Vote yes on Amendment 3.
The way they're doing it in Florida, it's going to be very good.
The vice president outlined her ideas this week, and our Washington, D.C. reporter Andrew Behringer takes a look at the not-so-subtle differences between the two candidates.
I'm Andrew Behringer with the Washington, D.C. report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. In a shift in the 2024 presidential race, cannabis legalization has become a topic of conversation, with both major candidates throwing their support behind cannabis reform. Vice President Kamala Harris has unveiled a bold policy agenda pledging to legalize cannabis at the federal level if elected. Her campaign promises to work with Congress to make sure that the safe cultivation, distribution, and possession of adult use cannabis is legal nationwide. This move aligns with the Biden administration's previous actions in 2022, which included pardoning low-level federal cannabis offenders and initiating cannabis rescheduling. Former President Donald Trump has also expressed support for cannabis reform. Trump recently endorsed Amendment Number 3, a Florida ballot initiative to legalize cannabis, in a new campaign ad. This campaign ad shows Trump discussing the measure during a podcast, stating it will be very good for Florida. He emphasizes the importance of age restrictions and proper regulation. The bipartisan nature of this issue is now evident, with both Harris and Trump backing cannabis legalization at different levels. This unexpected alignment could suggest that the federal cannabis policy may be on the brink of substantial change, regardless of the election's outcome. That does not mean you can't go and vote. Well, that's going to do it for me in the Washington, D.C. report. I'm Andrew Behringer reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
Before we leave the nation's capital, the U.S. Supreme Court is hearing a case about a trucker who was fired for testing positive for THC, even though the products he bought claimed they were free from THC. The plaintiff is a commercial trucker from New York named Doug Horn. He claims he had never used cannabis, but after purchasing a CBD tincture called Dixie X-Way back in 2012, he tested positive for the intoxicating cannabinoid THC. When Horn bought the tincture, he was recovering from a work-related accident. And now, because this is a wrongful termination lawsuit, Horn is seeking triple damages and is being represented by Medical Marijuana Inc. There are many eyes watching the result of this case and its impact on other employees who have lost jobs because of false positive drug tests caused by the lack of regulation and testing for many CBD products. Our next story is a very disturbing one because once again, it puts the focus on the public safety issue in the all-cash cannabis industry. Lawmakers continue to drag their feet and ignore the many efforts to get safe banking through Congress. And now a crime in Oregon is once again highlighting the dangers of limiting licensed operators to all cash interactions and transactions. In Oregon, a botched robbery ended up with the killing of 2 perpetrators at the hands of a dispensary worker. Here's Marianne Cursetjee with more from her state.
I'm Marianne from Alibi with the Oregon Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Oregon-based dispensary chain LaModa is again in the news. Security at dispensaries has been a problem in Portland for years. Additionally, federal law restricts concealed carry for those who consume cannabis, although this has been challenged in court and the rules may be evolving. According to Portland police, 3 individuals were committing armed robbery at a LaModa dispensary around 10 p.m. The solo bud tender was working in the back, heard noises, and confronted the robbers. The bud tender then retrieved his weapon and left the store. He then fired on the robbers through the window, killing 2 of them. Murder charges have been filed against the bud tender. And next, Oregon-based Wild continues its market domination. MJ Biz Daily reports that Wild is the top-selling brand in more than half of adult-use markets. Their recognizable packaging and consistent flavor and effects have created a true national brand. Given the supply chain complexity in a state-regulated industry, this is phenomenal. That's the Oregon Cannabis Report. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
There are many states that are watching the impact of California Governor Gavin Newsom's decision to shut down the sale of intoxicating hemp products in his state. None more interested than the state that might have the most active market of hemp-derived products, the Lone Star State of Texas. Here's Lisa Williams in Dallas, where decriminalization is on the ballot. And now, while Nelson, one of the true legends of music in America and cannabis advocates, is campaigning for the Democratic opponent, Colin Allred, in the battle for Ted Cruz's seat in the Senate.
I'm Lisa Williams, bringing you the Texas Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. All right, y'all, grab your hats because Texas legend Willie Nelson is back in the spotlight. And nope, it's not for another country hit. This time, Willie's lending his iconic voice to the fight for cannabis reform, endorsing Dallas's proposition which aims to decriminalize marijuana possession. Willie's been riding this cause for years, and now he's calling on Dallas voters to make history at the ballot box come November. Marijuana is an herb and a flower, not a crime, Willie said, and he threw his support behind the Ground Game Texas, a group leading this local decriminalization effort. This proposition would put an end to low-level marijuana possession charges in Dallas, which is an issue close to Willie's heart. He's had his own run-ins with Texas's harsh marijuana laws. And let's just say he knows firsthand how disruptive a single possession charge can be. But this isn't just about Dallas. Across Texas, cities like Austin, Denton, and San Marcos have already passed similar measures. However, the battle for decriminalization has been bumpy, with state officials, including Texas Governor Greg Abbott, pushing back against local efforts, arguing that cities can't override state law. Even so, the momentum for reform is growing, and Willie's latest push could tip the scales for the Dallas voters. And it's not just decriminalization on the line. A new report criticizes Texas' medical marijuana program, calling it barely sufficient, with just 3 dispensaries serving the entire state. Of too few doctors able to prescribe medical cannabis, many patients are being left out. Meanwhile, 73% of Texans say they support either full legalization or decriminalization, showing that the public is ready for broader reform, but lawmakers seem to be dragging their boots. Willie's not having any of it. His Teapot Party, founded in 2010, has been pushing for cannabis to be legalized, taxed, and regulated. And his latest endorsement of Proposition R is a rally cry for Texans to vote for change. So come November, you could bet Willie, along with countless others, will be watching closely to see if Dallas steps up to the plate. Y'all, it's more than just about weed. It's about fairness, freedom, and the future of cannabis in Texas. So get out there and vote, as Willie says. It's high time we stop treating this flower like a crime. I'm Lisa Williams, founder of the Toke Agency, bringing you the Texas Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
In Michigan, sales continue to slide now that Ohio is open for adult use. In September, total sales dropped to just under $267 million, and that total is about 10% below the record set in August for sales in Michigan of $295 million. Prices are still slipping as the market adjusts to neighboring states' impact on the Michigan market. Now, when it comes to the developments in Michigan cannabis business market, the founder of the Michigan Weedsters, Amie Carter, is right in the middle of it. Amie is a passionate advocate for allowing young people who rely on the plant medicine to have access to it during the school day. This is something that literally strikes home with her and her 17-year-old son, Jayden, who are fighting for the rights of others with similar challenges in the Michigan legislature. This week, results from a major study on the impact of CBD on autism backs up the results Amie has found with her own son. Here's our Michigan correspondent, Amie Carter.
I'm Amie Carter from Michigan Weedsters with this week's Coast to Coast News. I was very happy to read the study. I am not surprised at all. It has helped my son so much. He started cannabis when he was just 9 years old. It has helped in so many different ways with his anxiety, it stabilizes his mood, it helps with his nausea and headaches, it's enhanced his creativity, it's made him more self-aware. And he has hit milestones that I honestly never thought he would hit. It completely changed his life, and he is no longer violent and aggressive. If you want to learn more about our journey, you can go to YouTube and search Grassroots Movement, or you can purchase a copy of Courage in Cannabis, which is sold on Amazon. And it is a great collection of different authors that have shared their journey on how cannabis helped them. I'm Amie Carter with Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
This is why you need to hear these stories. They might just change your life. Meet Dr. Bridget Williams, an award-winning physician, entrepreneur, and author. She's back with Courage in Cannabis Volume 2, The Triumphant Stories. This anthology features 39 brave authors who share how cannabis transformed their lives. You'll hear from people like Adam Wilkes, CEO of Tyson 2.0, who grew up in a pre-legal world, and that's just the beginning. From overcoming addiction and trauma to managing diabetes and autism, these stories will open your eyes. They even touch on brain injuries, entrepreneurship, and athletics. Have you ever wondered about the real impact of cannabis? This book has the answers. And wait, there's more. Sparks, short, powerful testimonies and quotes from industry influencers like Ed Rosenthal, Jane West, and even Mike Tyson. Each story will challenge your assumptions and enlighten your perspective. Don't miss Amie Carter's heartfelt story on how cannabis changed her son's life. Ready to be inspired? Get your copy of Courage in Cannabis Volume 2 today on Amazon, because the power is in the stories.
That'll do it for the A block, or first part of our weekly Cannabis Coast to Coast news. In our next section, we will take a look at what's going on in California, where their governor's emergency ban on hemp products is causing an industry meltdown, as that state's Alcoholic Beverage Commission removes hundreds of items deemed to be unlicensed and unregulated. That and Al Roker and Snoop Dogg team up for a weather report on the Today Show.
Ready to take your craft to the next level? Imagine faster extractions, purer products, and more profits. Sounds good, right? At Pure 5 Extraction, we've revolutionized cannabis extraction with our game-changing technology. No solvents, no heat, just the cleanest, most natural process on the market. Whether you're a boutique grower or a large-scale operation, Pure 5 has the tools to elevate your business worldwide. Visit pure5extraction.com today. Pure 5 Extraction, because your plants deserve the best.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Welcome to Cannabis Media, your go-to for all things cannabis. PCM is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news and talk shows with a twist. We've got 16 state correspondents and multimedia journalists from around the US and Canada. It all started back in 2018 when founder Jimmy Young kicked off the In the Weeds podcast. His mission? Documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. Fast forward to today, and we've got Cannabis Coast to Coast with Alaina Pinto delivering the nation's only TV-style cannabis news show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast News, Cannabis Media's weekly roundup of the news from the industry. I'm Alaina Pinto.
As of August 2024, PCM has racked up over 1.2 million views and 14.5 million impressions on our YouTube channel. With 15,000 subscribers and growing, our reach is spreading like wildfire. Cannabis Coast to Coast News, hosted by Alaina Pinto, features insights, interviews, and fresh perspectives from our network of 16 correspondents. It's your weekly dose of professional cannabis news straight from the experts. So, where can you catch all this awesome content? PCM's website, YouTube, Rumble, Discord, Roku, Twitch, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and even our very own PCM TV app. We've got over 1,000 videos in our archive, so there's always something new to watch.
We are Cannabis Media.
Welcome back to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is the B Block, and I'm Alaina Pinto. Remember to download our new app called PCM TV in the App Store or Google Play, and you can scan this QR code to take you right there. Then you can get on-demand news, content, and access to dozens of videos documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition over the past 3 years. Taking a look at California cannabis news now. Governor Gavin Newsom's emergency ban on intoxicating hemp products has shut down a major part of that industry. Now, attempts by the U.S. Hemp Roundtable and Cheech and Chong Enterprises to use legal means to get a restraining order and a lawsuit have been turned down. This week, Los Angeles County Superior Court Judge Stephen Gorvich denied the restraining order, calling it a drastic remedy. The California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control started a statewide crackdown on unlicensed THC-infused products. They inspected 383 establishments and seized more than 700 products across 14 brands, including Cheech and Chong products. All told, only 12 of the 383 businesses failed inspection, a 97% compliance rate. The court also clarified that cannabis products containing zero THC can continue to be sold. There's plenty of other big news from the Golden State. The California Department of Cannabis Control, or DCC, certified an environmental impact report in Mendocino County. This week, the action removes at least one barrier for nearly 500 provisional cultivation license holders, allowing them to move toward annual licensure and preventing their mass exodus before January 2025 deadline. Speaking of licenses, the DCC revoked Kush, Kush, collectives effective October 15th, claiming the company is involved in activity that poses harm to public health, safety, or welfare. They also issued an embargo affecting 194 of Kush's vape and vape cartridge products across 12 brands, claiming they are adulterated, misbranded, unlabeled, or contaminated. This is the 36th license revocation issued by the agency this year. And finally, here's an update on Operation Sticky Fingers, a sting that resulted in 24 arrests a few months ago for 15 dispensary burglaries involving $1 million worth of cannabis products in San Francisco's East Bay. 4 of the defendants have pleaded no contest to felony charges and are facing 90 days in jail and 3 years probation. The remaining co-defendants have hearings later this month or in December and April of next year. Now, let's check in with Matthew Friedlander in Washington State. Here he is.
Hi, I'm Matthew Friedlander, coming to you from the owner's office here at Skagit Organics with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast. Today's report, I will touch on a few political events that I've attended recently, as well as a conversation that the Cannabis Alliance hosted yesterday about bridging the divide between cannabis and hemp regulation. So I was able to attend a fundraiser for Bob Ferguson. He is our current Attorney General, but he is running for the governor's office. He has been very supportive of the cannabis industry here in Washington in his current role, and we expect him to do the same if he wins the governorship. So we wish him well in his election bid for that office. The Cannabis Alliance hosted a fundraiser for Representative Shelley Kloba earlier this week. She is a state rep that has been also very supportive of the cannabis industry. She was instrumental, actually, in getting the legislation passed that removed the excise tax from DOH, or Department of Health Compliant Medical Grade Products, when purchased by a registered medical cannabis patient. So we applaud her for her work on that legislation, and we expect her to continue to help move this industry forward in the future. As I mentioned yesterday, the Cannabis Alliance held a virtual town hall discussing bridging the gap between hemp and cannabis regulation. These two industries are regulated very differently, and depending on how hemp regulation proceeds at the federal level, which is moving much faster than cannabis regulation, this will impact state markets in very different ways. And so we're trying to get ahead of this. One thing that happened here in Washington, the legislation passed a bill that restricted any cannabinoid product to 0% THC. So even a hemp-based CBD product can no longer contain any amount of THC in it here in the state. What this, in effect, has done is reduce the number of hemp licensees in Washington from about 250 last year to 40 this year. Pretty much has destroyed the hemp industry here in the state. Nobody's willing to, take the kind of risk that they might be facing now with this new legislation. So that's what I have for you this week. My name is Matthew with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast.
It wasn't too long ago that Leafly was riding high as one of the most popular online websites and editorial groups in the industry. But now Leafly Holdings Inc. is facing potential delisting from NASDAQ. The company received a delisting notice on October 4th for failing to meet the exchange's net income requirements. This could seriously impact Leafly's ability to raise capital in an already cash-strapped industry. Leafly CEO Yoko Miyashita stated, "We are continuing to work with them and provide them updates on our progress to regain compliance with the applicable listing standards." The company's struggles reflect broader challenges in the cannabis sector, with several other firms facing similar exchange troubles. As the industry grapples with financial pressures, this situation highlights the ongoing hurdles for cannabis businesses in maintaining mainstream financial listings. Here's our man, who is high on Wall Street, Doug Miller.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's cannabis stock report for Cannabis Coast to Coast. Leafly Holdings, Inc. quietly reported that it may be delisted from the NASDAQ exchange. They received a delisting notice from NASDAQ staff on October 4th. According to an October 10th 8K filing with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, Leafly requested a hearing which could result in a 180-day extension. Its stock will continue to trade on NASDAQ during the appeal. Let's see how the stock chart looks. It's trading around $2.01, and it's setting up as almost all the cannabis stocks are. Something positive is about to happen in the cannabis industry, so I'll be watching for this, because when the stock chart's set up like this, something's going to happen. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast, I'm Doug Miller.
This is Debbie Facey with the Cannabis Coast to Coast News Report. So we have in Canada this week, officially we turned 6, which is great. Justin Trudeau obviously had a beautiful shout out on what we call X. But no, it's great because the fact that we have made it this far, it has been a hurdle. It still is a hurdle, but we are at least aged, which is great. And I'm happy about that. Next, what we have is the report coming in stating that we are on the rise, or I want to say the uphill of profits when it comes to Canada and our overall Canada and our cannabis sales. We've seen an uprise, and it's something that is great for most of the LPs and producers. The retailers are obviously going to be finding a little bit more of a depletion due to the fact of the amount of stores that are just popping up. But hopefully they're able to gather some sort of mechanism, way, scheme to be able to subdue that for themselves. And last but not least, we have the VIP Experience, which is a 2-day conference out in Mississauga run by VIP Media. And it's called the Elevate Conference. And basically, it is a great way for LPs, craft producers, and bud tenders to come together to find out not only the up-and-coming products that are going to be coming to the market, but the education that they might not know, some of the information that is going to be implied, and also a great way to network with each other. That's going to be happening November 12th to the 14th, and I'm going to be happily reporting from there. So once again, this is Debbie Facey with the Cannabis Coast to Coast News Report. Peace.
New Hampshire is still the only state in New England that does not have adult use sales, but now their medical program is expanding. 3 new laws are opening up more access to medical marijuana in the Granite State. The big change? Doctors can now certify patients for cannabis use for any debilitating condition. This could lead to a moderate increase in program participants, which currently serves about 15,000 people. But there are still hurdles. As Matt Simon from Granite Leaf Cannabis points out, quote, many Granite staters use cannabis for medical reasons, but may not realize they can qualify for the program. The state's hoping these changes will help more patients get registered and access safe, legal cannabis. It's a step forward for medical marijuana in New Hampshire, but the impact remains to be seen, and if their legislature will be taking up the adult use question again. In Arizona, there are rulings on 2 interesting cannabis court cases. Here's Karen Black with those stories and more.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. 2 court cases are creating controversy. The first gave the green light to medical cannabis dispensaries to set up shop near preschools. There's a split opinion with a strong dissent, with the majority upholding the difference between preschools and K-12 schools under Arizona law. This could open more prime locations for dispensaries across the state, but don't expect to see pot shops next to daycares just yet because local zoning laws still apply. Some say it's a win for Arizona's declining medical market, but the ruling is already sparking some heated debate about community planning and child safety. Impaired or not impaired? That was the question in the second case. The court ruled cannabis users cannot be convicted of DUIs solely for testing positive for THC. Instead, prosecutors must prove actual impairment at the time of driving. The change aligns Arizona's laws with scientific understanding of cannabis impairment and could impact how law enforcement handles traffic stops and how cases are prosecuted in the state going forward. Phoenix's Tilt Holdings executive shuffle continues. Chris Kelly just stepped down as chief revenue officer after less than 2 years on the job. The company framed Mr. Kelly's departure as part of its ongoing transformation and refocusing efforts, but all the C-suite changes leave us wondering if they'll ever find some stability at the top of their ranks. As we all know, the plan has gotten quite political this year, so Curaleaf Arizona decided to have a little fun with it. The company launched its Toke the Vote initiative and introduced 3 election-themed strains named after presidential candidates, all with similar THC levels and flavor profiles. Reportedly, sales of the Trump and Harris strains are neck and neck. That's all for the Arizona Report. I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
The stereotype of the cannabis stoner is taking a beating lately as the public learns how to use the plant medicine for its different benefits and effects. Now, the link between cannabis legalization and physical activity is gaining attention. A recent study by associates of Brigham Young University suggests that cannabis legalization may actually boost physical activity levels. Researchers found that legalization corresponded to greater physical activity, especially among older adults. Interestingly, cannabis users didn't show significantly lower activity levels compared to non-users. This challenges the stereotype of the lazy stoner and hints at potential health benefits of cannabis legalization beyond its direct medical applications. As more states consider legalization, these findings could influence public health discussions and policy decisions going forward. Now let's check in with Joe Parsons in Virginia.
I'm Joe Parsons with the Virginia Cannabis Connection, and this is the Virginia Cannabis Report on Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Did you know, every day, 22 American veterans sadly take their own lives? That's a tragic end to the dedicated men and women that have served our country. Almost every case has been linked to severe post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. PTSD not only affects our former military, but police, rescue, and many others who risk everything to protect us during our most difficult times. For years, studies have been made to prove that cannabis can actually bring relief to PTSD patients. Finally, after much work, even the government is listening. More and more veterans groups are coming out in defense of cannabis reform and legalization. Virginia, of course, is no different. One of those groups is called Veterans for Veterans. They have a vision to support veterans and bring awareness to veteran suicide. They have an upcoming event planned for November. This event is called the First Annual Virginia Veterans Canna Competition. It'll be held November 8th through the 10th. It will feature multiple growers, vendors, and plenty of live music from 5 bands. The event's proceeds will be going to help educate and support cannabis as an alternative medicine and to help PTSD and promote many of the healing benefits of our beloved plant medicine. Now, this is a cannabis-friendly event, but is BYOC to keep it legal. You can purchase tickets from the web address below. I know that after this long election, it'll be nice to support our veterans and help curb one of the deadliest causes of death to the proud men and women that have served our country. I applaud them for what they're doing. Lastly, Founder and executive producer of Cannabis Coast to Coast News, Jimmy Young joined me on the amazing cannabis podcast, Higher Education's Coffee Talk, sponsored by 97.5 3WV in Charlottesville. As always, it was a blast. You can catch the full podcast on www.3wv.com. Full address is on the screen. Thank you, Jimmy, for helping me to make it rock. Well, that's going to do it for this week from the Virginia Cannabis Connection and reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Joe Parsons. Until next time, stay lifted.
That'll do it for the B Block for this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News, but we have some more stories for you from other states, and we will tell you about Snoop Dogg's appearance at the Weatherboard with the Today Show's Al Roker. Cannabis Coast to Coast News continues after this.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Welcome to Pro Cannabis Media, your go-to for all things cannabis. PCM is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news and talk shows with a twist. We've got 16 state correspondents and multimedia journalists from around the US and Canada. It all started back in 2018 when founder Jimmy Young kicked off the In the Weeds podcast. His mission? Documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. Fast forward to today, and we've got Cannabis Coast to Coast with Alaina Pinto delivering the nation's only TV-style cannabis news show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast News, Pro Cannabis Media's weekly roundup of the news from the industry. I'm Alaina Pinto.
As of August 2024, PCM has racked up over 1.2 million views and 14.5 million impressions on our YouTube channel. With 15,000 subscribers and growing, our reach is spreading like wildfire. Cannabis Coast to Coast News, hosted by Alaina Pinto, features insights, interviews, and fresh perspectives from our network of 16 correspondents. It's your weekly dose of professional cannabis news straight from the experts. So, where can you catch all this awesome content? PCM's website, YouTube, Rumble, Discord, Roku, Twitch, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and even our very own PCM TV app. We've got over 1,000 videos in our archive, so there's always something new to watch.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Welcome back to the C Block of Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Alaina Pinto. Have you downloaded the PCM TV app yet? It's the best way to get access to our weekly news show and access to the top news stories and programs with just one touch of the app, available at Google Play or the App Store. You can also scan the QR code now to get immediate access. If you want to get immediate access, though, to the latest developments with the Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association, you'll want to check out Tina Tasaka's reports. And now you will need your passport since that group is taking their influence worldwide. Here's Tina.
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and this is the Nevada and Tribal Nations report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. The Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association has been globe-hopping, and for good reason. On October 18th and 19th, Rob Pirro went to Peru and attended the inaugural Andean Hemp and Cannabis Trade Forum. This is a partnership with the Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association and the Global Cannabis Network Collective. This historic event offers informative sessions about the region's legal framework and opens doors for companies looking to launch hemp and medicinal cannabis brands in Peru and South America. Meanwhile, Mary Jane Oatman was attending the Indigenous BizCon, whereby she was not only a speaker, the ICIA was a sponsor. The BizCon was held at the Potawatomi Hotel and Casino in Milwaukee, and the mission is for revitalizing traditions, driving innovation within tribal nations. Rob Pirro is the founder of the Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association, and Mary Jane Oatman is the executive director. Can you say, I'll take one of those labs to go? 2 weeks ago, I reported on a big drug bust in Lyon County, Nevada. Well, based on that seizure and deputies discovering and seizing 3,500 pounds of marijuana and other unlawful items from an illegal grow operation, the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board used this opportunity to do a field test on a new $18,000 portable light lab.
You input the sample here through a syringe. The sample runs up through this filter, through the system, and then out the waste. And in 8.5 minutes, roughly, you'll get a result that comes up.
CCB Executive Director James Hum emphasized the equipment's value, allowing law enforcement to quickly assess THC content on site, which can save time and resources.
It'll tell you exactly what chemicals are inside the plant, concentrate, or edible that you just tested. This is a light lab, technology new to the state of Nevada, and the Cannabis Compliance Board says it's going to be a critical tool for law enforcement boots on the ground who need to know what risks they face during drug busts.
He also reminded consumers to only purchase marijuana from dispensaries to avoid potential risk from illicit grows. That's it for the Nevada highlights and Tribal Nations. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies and Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
New York's fledgling cannabis market has been an adventure and frustration for many. Now the city is offering a low-interest loan to qualified social equity applicants. The Green Market Report released the story about these 3-year, $100,000 loans that social equity licensees from the conditional adult use retail license can apply for. Cannabis's #1 personality, Snoop Dogg, is spending some time in New York City too. Snoop is a regular coach on NBC's weekly show called The Voice, and this week he decided to stop in on the Today Show and was invited over to do the weatherboard with Al Roker. If you can see some of the cities and towns Snoop had to report on, from Potsdam, Pennsylvania to Mary Jane Valley in Nevada, with stops in Roach, Missouri, and Blunt, South Dakota, there's only one Snoop Dogg, right? Love that. Okay, now it's time for the Ohio Report. Here's Christina Brisson, now sponsored by Yellow Labs, available in 40 dispensaries in Ohio and now in Massachusetts.
Hi, I'm Christina Brisson with Over the Top Renovations with your weekly Ohio Cannabis Report with Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Quick update for sales. Recreational sales have gone over $109 million, and since the inception of medical marijuana in January of 2019, we've achieved over $1.99 billion in sales. And in the last 30 days, the price of an ounce has dropped from $230 to $223.50. So we're seeing those prices slowly come down. But when it comes to earning, in 2025, banks are projected to earn up to $2 million in interest alone in providing capital to the cannabis industry. And continuing with this ongoing stream of moratoriums, now Troy, Ohio is considering this. There will be a meeting held at City Hall on November 4th, and the public is welcome. They'll be taking comments to make a decision, so speak up, Troy. That is your weekly Ohio Cannabis Report, and I am Christina Brisson with Over the Top Renovations and Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
The Ohio Cannabis Report is supported by Yellow Labs and BetterWaysToTHC.com. Search for Yellow Labs near me and find one of 40 dispensaries in Ohio carrying these amazing mists and creams.
A new study from the University of Colorado at Boulder is giving hope to chronic back pain sufferers. Researchers found that cannabis edibles, especially those high in THC, can significantly reduce lower back pain. Over 200 participants tried different types of edibles for 2 weeks. The results? THC dominant products came out on top for pain relief. CBD dominant edibles didn't do as much for pain, but they did help with tension. This study adds to the growing evidence that cannabis could be a safer alternative to traditional pain meds. It's a promising development that could change the game for millions dealing with chronic back pain. Jill Goldsberry is back with us from New Jersey this week. Here's her Garden State Cannabis Report.
Hey, welcome to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Jill Goldsberry with the New Jersey Report, and here's what's going on in New Jersey. We've got some news. The New Jersey Cannabis Training Academy for Entrepreneurs launched this week. And back in January, the New Jersey Business Action Center announced a selection of the Cannabis Training Academy teachers for the Education Assistance Program. It is an online program that has 5 different levels of classes, and it's available right now. And it's for free. It's available on nj.gov. Students can take the classes and for free, like I said, up to, I believe, level 3. And if you are hiring in an impact zone as a cannabis entrepreneur, you will have access to the advanced classes. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Speakers at the recent press conference included Executive Director of the Academy, Tahid Chappelle, and New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission Chair, Diana Hugh. And the goal of the program is to level the playing field for entrepreneurs who have faced challenges in the past. In other news, just in time for Halloween, we got a little wellness kicked off at the Golden Door Dispensary in Jersey City. It's a veteran-owned space, and they hosted the Puff and Polish 2024 wellness event featuring yoga by Urban Souls, protein bars by Spica, and cannabis by It's Alive NYS. It's live cannabis on Instagram, and you could find more information about them on Instagram. They are a live dried cannabis brand, and it's brand new. So we're very happy. They're very happy to be a part of this event. And New Jersey is set to host its very first cannabis influencer content creator house. You heard me correctly. This house is going to be a creator content space for 2 days from October 23rd to the 25th in Neptune, New Jersey. And if you're a content creator in the food space, in the wellness space, in the beauty space or fashion space, reach out to Butter Cake on Instagram and see if you can get your ticket, score your seat at the table. You can check out some more of my conversation with Martha Figaro, the CEO of Butter Cake, about the cookies that will probably be at the event. All right. I'm Jill with Coast to Coast Cannabis News, with Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
Good evening. This is Jeff Aker with Cannabis News, Coast to Coast from Florida. Yes, I made it through the hurricane. It was scary, I can tell you that. And I've been very busy in my recovery efforts of cleaning up around my house. It was a mess. Well, what's happened this week, or 2 weeks since I've talked to you last? We're getting closer, less than 2 weeks from the date. Early voting starts Monday, where the polls in my county are going to be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to facilitate the vote. A couple things that have gone on. My wife actually got a voicemail from Ron DeSantis asking her to vote no. I saw a neat thing by Grady Judd, the Polk County Sheriff, saying he doesn't support it, but if we vote it in, he will go by what we say because he works for us. And that's what I feel Ron DeSantis needs to do, is if it passes, he needs to build a great program for Florida. Get with every governor across the country that has recreational cannabis. Find out which programs work the best. Take pride in that program was built in his state, one of the most successful programs in the country. Take pride in that. Try to do that. Thank you for your support and prayers for my well-being through the hurricane. And I will be back next week with more news as we get closer for Florida. Again, I'm Jeff Aker, Master Gardener for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
While federal lawmakers continue to pick sides over giving the industry access to safe banking, dispensaries become targets for robberies and violence. At the top of the show, we told you about the double fatal shooting in Oregon. Well, Delaware isn't waiting for the feds. They are giving access to banks as their legal adult use market kicks off. Governor John Carney signed a bill this week that amends Title 16 of the Delaware Code that will shield banks, credit unions, and other financial providers from state-level prosecution for working with plant touching businesses. Another part of those new protections extends to armored car services and CPAs. That market is already taking license applications, and that number is up to 1,200 in that tiny state. This week, the United States Hemp Authority announced they are launching a new adult hemp product certification program. Since that industry has been asking for federal regulations since Congress passed the Farm Bill in 2018, the hemp industry is taking on this self-regulation initiative. These standards are designed to control the quality and labeling of their products and the rogue sales of products to underage 21 consumers. The U.S. Hemp Authority is hopeful they can corral the bad actors amongst them who have been driving the exploding intoxicating hemp industry. Setting a safe set of rules and regulations is what the FDA was supposed to do for 6 years. Even Senator Ron Wyden's new federal bill is designed to hand regulation rules to the FDA that could include this new certification program as a guide. And finally tonight, a new multi-state operator has opened its doors in Buffalo, New York, called Starbuds. But this is not the first cannabis company operating under the name of Starbuds. In fact, there are two. One is a multi-state operator that opened in Buffalo, New York. They are owned by Medicine Man Technologies. That LLC does business as Swayze, with operations in Colorado, Illinois, Maryland, Oklahoma, and Mississippi. This is the exterior of the Buffalo dispensary, and you might notice the black and green balloons that might remind you of a certain coffee chain that originated in Seattle. But it was this food truck in New York City, operated by Brand Pat LLC, that sparked the lawsuit and caught Starbucks' eyes to start with a copyright infringement lawsuit. It was filed by Starbucks this past summer, and this week, a judge says it's time to destroy all logos and products containing the copycat images. Stories like this just shows that the cannabis industry has to start using their heads more and less of their product more responsibly. After all, that's why we end each show reminding people that it is a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. That's Cannabis Coast to Coast News this week. I'm Alaina Pinto. We'll see you next week.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Welcome to Pro Cannabis Media, your go-to for all things cannabis. PCM is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news and talk shows with a twist. We've got 16 state correspondents and multimedia journalists from around the US and Canada. It all started back in 2018 when founder Jimmy Young kicked off the In the Weeds podcast. His mission? Documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. Fast forward to today, and we've got Cannabis Coast to Coast with Alaina Pinto delivering the nation's only TV-style cannabis news show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast News, Pro Cannabis Media's weekly roundup of the news from the industry. I'm Alaina Pinto.
As of August 2024, PCM has racked up over 1.2 million views and 14.5 million impressions on our YouTube channel. With 15,000 subscribers and growing, our reach is spreading like wildfire. Cannabis Coast to Coast News, hosted by Alaina Pinto, features insights, interviews, and fresh perspectives from our network of 16 correspondents. It's your weekly dose of professional cannabis news straight from the experts. So, where can you catch all this awesome content? PCM's website, YouTube, Rumble, Discord, Roku, Twitch, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and even our very own PCM TV app. We've got over 1,000 videos in our archive, so there's always something new to watch.